Guys, it's 5:32 p.m. Thank you very much for joining the monthly DEI Task Force meeting. Naomi did send out the agenda that wanted to use today to set a tone for our meeting. And so I just want to go over it with everyone. As many of you know, we did a DEI training on Saturday, January, I think should it say January 30th or was it January 23rd?
23rd.
Okay, right. So that my date was correct then. So for the, how many of you guys, by show of hands here, how many of you guys actually attended the DEI training on that Saturday? So I saw Paul there, Naomi was there. I see 4 hands up. Marjorie Gifford just asked in the chat, what does DEI stand for? That is diversity, equity, and inclusion. It is an initiative by Rotary International to, number one, educate clubs about the need to have diversity, equity, and inclusion as part of the philosophy in your clubs. But thanks for asking that question. I think this sets the first agenda item here, in the sense that the DEI training is so important, and we try to simplify it in a way that it would make sense and it would start a conversation. And we did that by doing some breakout sessions and stuff like that. But for those of you who attended, let me ask you what your thoughts are, and then I'll tell you some of the feedback that I got from emails and stuff like that. So tell me, what do you think worked, and what do you think we needed to work on when it comes to having this type of DEI training? So Dick, why don't I start off with you, since you did raise your hand saying that you did attend the training.
Well, the training I thought was very useful, and I think any training we do on this subject is going to be useful. But I got to talk about one thing that I saw yesterday in the president's meeting that was really useful, and that was the iceberg chart that shows those items that we look at in diversity, equity, and inclusion that are obvious, like, you know, balance among the sexes, racial origin, ethnicity, and so forth. But there was all that stuff below the tip of the iceberg that really talks to what diversity really is. This is kind of what I've been thinking, is that I mean, we're a business. It's a business imperative. We're in the business of helping people. If we want to help people, we've got to have people who are our workers, volunteers to help people. So we need to be welcoming to everybody. And so if you look at all of those things, people's work situation, they have a child to take care of at home. Maybe they can attend a Rotary meeting in the morning or the afternoon or whatever. All those are components of diversity. And to me, it boils down to one simple thing. Each club needs to talk to those who we're interested in joining, talk to those who approach us, talk to those who work with us on projects, find out where they're coming from, what their life is like, what they might be interested in, and how we might fit. If we're not a perfect fit, but they're a great fit for Rotary, let's get them in another Rotary club. But let's be welcoming. We could do things like form satellite clubs and stuff. We got a lot of flexibility, but maybe it's more just the simple flexibility of deciding when and how we do our meetings, how we fold in those who are not going to be there in person, how we fold in those people on work projects and stuff, and really make them feel welcome if they can't attend a breakfast meeting or a dinner meeting every week. That to me is kind of the essence of it, is making those who come to us or those we seek out feel welcome, feel like they belong.
Well said, Dick. Thank you very much for those comments. Anybody else want to add to that? Rich, Naomi, Paul, I think Scott just joined us. I think he was there at the training. What worked and what needs work on?
I'll just sort of piggyback on what Dick said, and that is that we all think that we're pretty diverse by what we see, but what we don't see, we're not really paying much attention to. and it's kind of challenging, I gotta say, to try to figure out how to drill down, if you will, to become more diverse in the areas that we don't see. Without being, really conscious of them. And so just bringing it back to what do we do in our own clubs? I mean, being welcoming is certainly something we should do, but how do we consciously and intentionally make this happen?
Great, thank you, Rich. Anybody else want to add? Nomi, Paul, Scott? Did I miss anybody else that attended the training on the 23rd?
I just would just, maybe dovetail on what some have already said. I thought the training was really good, and I thought that everybody did a great job of that. And, like Rich said, makes you think about the stuff that we don't see, behind the scenes that we just assume.
Exactly.
I think Rich hit the nail on the head there. In other words, we think, and we may well be diverse in our membership. We need to look at everything on our image. What's our website look like? What does our club look like? How do we appear to someone looking for a home in Rotary? If we say that we are a breakfast club and they see photos and we mostly look like retirees and stuff, they might go, I'm a young professional. I live in the neighborhood, but I have to commute to work in Honolulu in the morning and I'm not sure if I fit. We need to figure out a way to make them feel welcome. And then when they join the club, to be part of our persona.
Definitely. And I think it goes back to your original statement in the sense that it's not only diversity, equity, and inclusion in respective clubs, it's just in District 5000 and in Rotary in general. So, got a lot of great feedback. Everyone was excited about the fact that we've had this type of conversation. And I think people are now recognizing the importance of having this type of conversation in their clubs. I think the one area where they said that we needed improvement was we should have been given more time to talk about DEI in that training because it was swift and whatnot. But we did well with the time allotted and everything like that. But I think that creates a framework for us to then take it to out to the club in terms of the education, right? And so that brings me to the next agenda item, which is taking the DEI education to our clubs. So I made the PowerPoint available. I intend to make the PowerPoint available so that anyone who wanted to use it to then bring it to their club, whether it be in a special session or part of their weekly meetings, could then have that conversation. But I wanted to have a discussion among all of us here in terms of, is that the best way to kind of get the conversation moving beyond an education session? And then how do you guys see us unfolding it in terms of, I put on there an idea of maybe training the trainers. So in other words, among the task force, maybe we could create a group of trainers that can then train presidents or like a club administrator to then take the PowerPoint and then having the right conversations in their club so that at the end of the day, when we get people educated on what DEI means and what it means for Rotary, we all then are speaking the same language. So any thoughts around that in terms of how do we then bring it to the next level, which is bringing that education to the clubs? Any thoughts on that? I mean, we can certainly just give the PowerPoint to any president or any club administrator that wants to create a DEI training for their club. But I'm just using the word danger for a better word, but the danger is that there could be misinterpretation or just not using the same language or cadence in how we talk about DEI. So that would be the only concern about just freely giving it away versus actually creating a training around it with trainers who can then pass on that knowledge to club presidents. Thoughts? Naomi, you were going to say something?
Yeah, we have the club trainers on the third Monday. And so we could be training the club trainers to do that in their clubs. So that's one. We have a Vibrant Club workshop coming up in March. And so maybe that's another place that we can talk about this, of having a session. So if every club can commit at least one session in their club to talk about this, and maybe we give them a worksheet so that they can put some notes down and we can consolidate those. But if each of us could take a few, if you train us and we each take a few clubs, then we can make the rounds all across the state.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I like the train the trainer option that you're bringing up, Conrad, or even what Naomi was saying. Because to your point about holding the curriculum or the intent correctly, so there's another program I was involved in where they did exactly that, train the trainer, and it was specifically for those reasons. They didn't want it to be let out, to be interpreted, to be changed, that everything would be delivered the same, with the same intent, with the same explanations. And it worked out really well. The program has stayed true to itself and its intent, and it's received well. And like in that program, I got to be one of the trainers, and now we're training the next set of trainers to go out on the outer islands. And so we tailor it a little bit because it was a mainland-based program to fit scenarios for Hawaii, but the main staples of it all stays the same, no matter what state you're in when you take the program.
Awesome. Thank you. Anybody else have anything to add?
The one thing I was thinking about that seemed to be missing in the training that I would have liked to have seen were maybe the development of action steps that would be available to the people who are going to roll out the project, so that they don't give the information, but they give the way we can use that information for diversifying the club.
Agreed. And had we had more time, I think we could have move it into that direction, Rich, and stuff like that. So I certainly love for us to then mastermind around, okay, so here's the PowerPoint. This is how we rolled it out. Here are the various breakout sessions. Can we improve on those breakout sessions so that it creates a much more concrete type of takeaway, actionable steps to your point and stuff like that. So I agree with Naomi. If we could start with the club trainers as the first step, and then it doesn't have to be just me training the trainers. I mean, if I think that's going to take us to the next agenda item, which is 3, which is what I wanted to try to do is among the task force, we should define some subcommittees, and the 3 subcommittees that I thought would be very critical to sustaining this task force every month are these 3 areas. And you guys may have a difference of opinion on it, but allow me to share what my thoughts are, and then please interject on what you think could be a better use of the task force. So the 3 areas that we could have in the subcommittee is an education and awareness subcommittee. And the purpose of this subcommittee is to ensure that all clubs receive the same education on DEI, as well as develop awareness programs that clubs can then use to keep DEI in the forefront of their clubs. The second subcommittee would be a resources and tools subcommittee. And the purpose of this subcommittee is to curate all the resources and tools that a club could use in evaluating and assessing and meeting DEI needs. And then the third subcommittee would be an outreach subcommittee. And the purpose of this subcommittee is to reach out to the clubs for a continuous feedback loop. And what I mean by that is, we don't want the clubs to just kind of feel like, okay, once we give you training, you're on your own. It's kind of like this continuous feedback. It's kind of like going out to the clubs, finding out what they're struggling with, and then bringing it back to the task force to see how can we help them with that, what they're struggling with. and vice versa. It's like, okay, in this task force, we may come up with some topics or some issues related to DEI that we want to make sure that the clubs are thinking about it and stuff like that. So this continuous feedback loop would come from this outreach subcommittee. So having said that, before we have a discussion on that, does anyone have anything to add with regards to subcommittees? Looks like
Hi, this is Nestorio Domingo.
Hi.
Yeah, I don't think I have to add to that, but the thought comes to mind when we talk about DEI is I was reading the Rotary strategic plan, and 4 of those which are expand our reach, participation, engagement, and increase our ability to adopt and increase our impact. And it has something, it's all interconnected with DEI. The problem I have that I'm trying to wrestle with is I think economic diversity. Being a Rotary, people think that we belong to a elite group people, only those people who can afford to join, because in my club, it's $300 per year to join, and of course it costs you to join every time you have a meeting, or you have to observe a lot of those costs, and you have to allocate time to participate. And the thing that I've been wrestling with is that people just don't have those. Because there are a lot of people out there that economically, struggling, and so, economically struggling, and then Rotarians, I don't know, but I think they're able to cope, adapt with the being a member of Rotary, and then we have all those well-off people who can actually, afford more than afford to pay the membership. And the problem is we want to diversify, but that's the issue that's have been the thought that I've been struggling with. How about those people who can afford? How do you deal with those? Maybe they want to participate in our community service projects.
Right. Yeah, I want to open up the floor to anyone for reaction to Nestorio's comments. But before I do, I just wanted to respond to it in the sense that, number one, obviously there are things that we cannot change, because obviously if there are dues that Rotary International has, that it is what it is. I think ways to kind of think about this would be, are we making the dues payment process much easier for a lot more people, in terms of if we're only collecting a lump sum every twice a year or annually or whatever, is that the only option that we have? I mean, there might be people that could make their payments, but if you can break it out on a monthly basis, can your club sustain a monthly kind of dues process to then roll up into every 6-month calculation, because that's when we pay Rotary International, things like that. And then of course there's other types of clubs that are out there, as well as there's an opportunity to create different levels of membership in the clubs and stuff like that. So those are things that I would be thinking about in terms of addressing that concern of yours, Nestorio. Anybody else want to comment on what Nestorio said?
Okay, a comment. I think Nestorio's comments are well taken. I do think that one of the things we need to look at, and I think we're looking at that, is this. I mean, we want people to join Rotary, and we want people to stay in Rotary. We want to increase the Rotary membership. It will never actually be for everybody, and that's not elitism. It's just a lot of people won't want to join or whatever. So we obviously are looking at folks who are inspired to join. We ask them to give of time, talent, and treasure. Not everybody can give an equal measure of treasure, but within a club, there are some insurmountable things that you need to do. Some must pay costs, but there are other costs that are optional. There's much more flexibility in Rotary clubs now through types of membership, I think, to accommodate people. Those who are younger folks, those who may not have as much income, and some will give more treasure and some will spend more time on projects and so forth. I think we just need to be more welcoming of whatever that balance is rather than have a rote way of doing things. I attended as a guest speaker in my second of my 3 careers for an aerospace company to talk to a Rotary Club on the mainland. And the first thing they did was to get together and fine a whole bunch of people large amounts of money. Wasn't a lot of sense of humor. And I thought, this is not a Rotary Club I would want to belong to. I want one that's welcoming, one that looks out for folks who need a little help along the way and work together. The secret for us is our journey. We started out as a small group of, guess what, white males with businesses supporting one another. That's not remarkable. What's remarkable is the journey that we have come through, where so many of our leaders are women, and so many of our folks are from all over the world. That's where the growth has been. So what we need to do in this whole business, I think, of diversity as it relates to membership is think of it like driving your car. Get in your car to drive, you take a look in the rearview mirror to make sure you don't back into anything. But most of the time you spend focused on the windshield because what's going to happen is in front of you and the view's better anyway. So I think we should train through the trainers, but I also think we need to make sure that this is a forward focus and that it's not a sidebar program that we're going to do or have a couple of people elect to attend on behalf of the club. This should be core to what we do. Our diversity is our strength. And I think it needs to be core training from the district down. I think our AGs ought to all be on that outreach subcommittee, and I'm one, so I would be. But I would actually love the education and awareness subcommittee because I think that's an area where we can make a huge impact.
Agreed. Yeah, I think the education and awareness is near and dear because that is the thing that's going to keep DEI top of mind going forward. Anybody else have any thoughts about the subcommittees, or am I missing a subcommittee that we should be having to sustain this DEI task force? Thoughts? Okay, so we can start here, and then as we evolve, we may find that a subcommittee is too narrow or it may be too broad, and then we can break it down even further and stuff like that. But we'll start off with these subcommittees and stuff like that. And I know that not everybody on the task force is currently on this call. So number one, we'll make sure that we make this meeting available, the recording of this meeting available for those who could not make it so that they can hear what we talked about and then start thinking about it. And I think what our next steps would be is to then say, okay, who wants to be on these various subcommittees, and then make sure that there's a leader or some co-leaders that will then create the framework for what the subcommittee will goals and tasks will be. So is that a fair assessment of how we should move forward with regards to these subcommittees? Yeah. Okay.
I have one question.
Yes.
I have one question. So we've been talking about this DEI for a while, and now we're planning to, take it to the club levels, and that's a good thing because when I first heard about this DEI, it's the first time I heard about it. I've took a lot of diversity training, but not in the context of DEI, and so it's a good thing that we're bringing this up to the forefront to bring awareness to club membership, and so it's that the purpose bring it to all the clubs.
Yes, and to your point, I mean, the fact that you said that, you know, it's been, we've been talking about it for a while and everything like that. I think it was a good process in the sense that, you know, we kind of started toying with the idea of anybody want to talk about it. Let's form this task force. Then we got the task force going to kind of start having some discussion points about it. And then, you know, it evolved into let's make sure that it's an educational component in the District 5000 training. We had that training. We got some excellent feedback. It is definitely something that everybody's thinking about and talking about. And some of the feedback was things like, you know, I'm glad that we're now talking about it because this is what we really need for our clubs and so forth. And I think now people are making the connection of how DEI is so important to membership in terms of retention and acquisition, right? So I think we're on the right path in terms of how we're rolling this out and making sure that going forward, it is really going to be a top of mind awareness, just like all the other things that we know Rotary is about, Foundation, Polio Plus, and so forth. So DEI is probably going to be one of those, right? Because it ties back to membership. So I think now that we've got the formation of the subcommittees, the next step is really to make sure that once all the task force committees task force has had a chance to review this recording so that they understand what those subcommittees are, we can then now say, okay, who wants to be on each of these subcommittees? Let's identify some leaders around it that will then shape the agenda for each subcommittee. And then that way we know that Education and Awareness Subcommittee would be part of the DEI education to the clubs, right? Because I mean, I would think it works hand in hand in that sense. So do you think it would be okay that we let the task force people know, I mean, those who are not with us today, know about the recording, and then make sure that they had a chance to listen to our conversation today, and maybe say by the end of the week, we then send out an email that says who wants to be on the various subcommittees and who wants to lead it, and then let's start getting the formation of these subcommittees within the next week or so that we can start having an idea and a plan behind the DEI education, which I talk about in agenda item number 2. Any thoughts, objections, anything like that?
Well, I've been a pretty vocal guy today, and you can tell me to shut up whenever I need to, but you know, we're about inclusion, and I think the first step in inclusion is we've got some good members who weren't able to be with us tonight. So I think your idea is spot on, that we need to get all of them up to speed on what's transpired here today, and then give them the opportunity to provide input. I remember taking a note after the last one. I think it was Carol, if I remember, from the Hickam Pearl Harbor Club, and I made a note and said, she's got a lot of great ideas. I need to reach out to her and chat about DEI. And so I'm thinking that may be a good first step. The other thing is, once we are up and running, I'm thinking we're not on this journey alone. There are many others making this journey with us. And we are here in Hawaii, which really has a lot of opportunities for us to explore the goodness and diversity. So I'm thinking on that resources and tools subcommittee, maybe it's not just Rotarians, maybe the folks on that subcommittee will reach out to other external resources to get as much information as we can. It'll keep us from jumping over that broken doorstep we meant to fix a couple of years ago and no longer see. So.
No, I like your idea, Dick, because under resources and tools, it could be making sure that we have a speaker bureau, so of people who are having conversations at corporations and other organizations with respect to DEI and everything like that. So that is definitely one of the tools that should be developed, and then make sure it's processed so that the clubs have access to such tools.
Hello.
Okay, great. Okay, so the takeaway that I've heard tonight is that we will use these three subcommittees as our foundation to keep the DEI task force with a plan. And that what we want to do is, because we recognize that there's a lot of people who have expressed interest in being on the task force, and people like Dick saying wanting to bring into the task force, let's give them an opportunity to listen to this recording, and so that they understand what our next steps are going to be, which is then to form these various subcommittees. I will send out an email either through, if I have the ability to send it out to the task force. I wasn't sure if I could send it out myself. Okay, Naomi's nodding yes, so I'll make sure that I can do it, and I'll send it out to the entire DEI task force and start asking for names in terms of who they want, which committee they should be on, and everything like that. And what will happen then is then each subcommittee should start meeting on their own to start putting together a plan so that we can have meaningful discussions in the task force by having subcommittee reporting. Okay. All right. Well, that's all I have. Does anybody have anything that they want to bring up with respect to the DEI task force that we did not address in the 3-item agenda that I had today?
Well, I think I'm worried that there seems to be conceptual overlap on the subcommittees, but that can be parsed out later. I think what is kind of an initial timeline, and even if it means we lean in and be a little bit aggressive, but keeping ourselves accountable to ourselves, like, rather than meet to meet, like, let's have kind of the deadlines around, we need people to have committed to a subcommittee, either themselves or identify another resource, or, by X date, with the goal of having a draft training plan discourse through the task force by May, so that June, the trainer could start being deployed, so that July, theoretically, for the new Rotary year, we could bake this in as part of, curriculum, or whatever makes kind of a logical, reasonable timeline, given it all the things that everybody else has going on, including pre-pets, pets, and all the other, business as usual, and then, our day job. But
yeah, no, I hear you, Kelly, and yes, I think the first step is, like I said, let's make sure that this recording is available, and let's make sure that anybody who was not able to attend, make sure that we say, be sure to listen to this by the end of this week, because by next week we want to start putting people onto subcommittees so that the subcommittees can start meeting, and then at that point you're creating some kind of accountability with each of the subcommittees and stuff like that. And I think to your point about potential overlap in areas of responsibility, we can help undo any kind of overlap by just making sure that each subcommittee has puts together some goals around
each committee is going to need to write a charter and have some goals, and then build out their timelines and deliverables from there. So
absolutely.
Part of this is, one is external facing, one is internal facing, one is the group doing the training and building the resource. I mean, we don't have to make it any more complicated than that, and people can figure out what that looks like. So
yeah, great. Thanks, Kelly. Anyone else?
Hey, Conrad?
Yes.
How about we do a web page on the district website so we can post the recordings and also some of the resources that we already have, so that if someone wants to find it, it'll be in one place. So where would be the best place to put that? So we could put it under membership. So you're on the horizontal navigation bar, there's a membership tab. We can put it under there. And then, so it's in one place and everybody can find, all the resources in one place.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense, especially since we said that DEI does have a tie-in with membership.
Okay.
It'll be good if it's fairly easy for folks to find, because as we as we get this information out, we may find new club members who haven't been involved at all with this, that it really resonates with, and they want to be part of it and take it forward. And that's part of our strength. So yeah, as long as it's accessible and people know that we are promoting their viewing this proceeding and what we're about, I think that's great.
Agreed. All right, guys. Well, if there's nothing else to add, I know that we try to make our meetings 60 minutes at a time, but you know what? If we don't have things to talk about, I don't want to waste people's time either. So that being said, I mean, I give you back the gift of 23 minutes. All right.
Hello, Conrad. Good job.
Thank
on
you,
the
Conrad. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Conrad.